Straight
Why to codify your knowledge ASAP. Now, this is something that I talked about way back in episode 1101 and all about codifying your knowledge. And first of all, let's get clear on this pronunciation. Sometimes I call it codify. Sometimes people call it codify. Let's see. I'm trying to play it out loud on my tablet, but there's no sound coming through. So how to pronounce, I think it's codify. I think the proper pronunciation is codify. Codify, codify, potato, potato. Let me see if I can get it to play.
Codify.
Codify.
Codify. So as y'all can hear right there. So we'll go with codify. Why to codify your knowledge. C-O-D-I-F-Y. So y'all know what word that I'm talking about here. Now, again, this is a subject that I'm consistently talking with entrepreneurs about. And I'm also talking with skilled professionals about this all the time. And I realized that while I have talked about it quite a lot, the earliest again was back in episode number 1101, where I first introduced the concept, that I need to get this whole subject laid out in more detail as to why it matters, especially for those of you who are highly skilled in the possession of specialized knowledge and specialized abilities, especially when those abilities are marketable, i.e. there are people who are willing to pay money for access to someone who has those skills. That's why codification matters even more than just getting your knowledge out of your head. But let me not get ahead of myself. Let's just get right into the topic so I don't step on my points. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is why to codify your knowledge ASAP. Number one, first of all, let's get clear on exactly what codifying your knowledge actually means. By definition, it means to organize or arrange systematically, especially in writing. Should I say that one again? Let me say it again and make sure y'all got it. So codify means to organize and arrange specifically in writing. Organize and arrange your knowledge systematically in written format. And why does it matter that it's in written format? Because you are documenting what you know in a recorded format that someone else can consume without your help. And by following that knowledge, they can produce a desired result. That's where the marketability part comes in. So you being able to do something is one thing, but producing a desired result that they otherwise may not have been able to achieve without that documentation, without that structured documentation, that makes it worth money because people will pay for results. Does everybody understand this? That's what codification is, and this is why it matters so much, because when you can document and show people how to do something that they couldn't otherwise do without your process, they'll be willing to pay money for that because you're solving a problem. People pay to solve problems. That's why codification matters the way that it does. And you got to take all the things that you know and that you know are valuable to others in your marketplace. That means the area in which people are interested with regards to what you know. And you get that stuff documented in such a way that someone who's not you can follow your documentation and they can achieve a specific outcome. When you can do that, now you have created leverage for yourself. You've created an opportunity for yourself because now that result is achieved through you and or through what you sell, your process, your program, your coaching, etc., whatever it is that you have to offer. Because now it's not just sitting in your head. So your knowledge must exist. All right, for this to work, for all these things that we're talking about now, people had to be able to understand what you know, apply what you know, and benefit from what you know. And it must exist somewhere that's not just in your head. Because if your knowledge is just in your head, and the only way other people can benefit from it is by literally talking to you in person. The things that I know and the things that I understand, one way that I document it is by recording it on this very show. And you get to listen to it. You don't have to talk to me personally to listen to it. There are some of you who do get to talk to me personally in different ways and at different times. But you get to hear from me without talking to me personally by listening to this show or watching a YouTube video or seeing a text message or reading an email. All of those are forms of documentation of my way of thinking. And the more stuff you have documented, the more reach your message has, more potential it has to reach other people when you document what you know. But the less stuff you have documented, the more your message relies on you actually reaching humans person to person in order to get your message out. The issue is I can get a message out to 100,000 people on YouTube but I cannot talk to 100,000 people in one day, at least not one-on-one, not person to person. Even if I went and spoke at a stadium, the 100,000 people in the stadium are hearing it, but I'm assuming there's a camera or two in there, and there could be another 10 million who see it on video. So you have to have a way of documenting what you know, right? Written form is documentation, audio is documentation, video is documentation. Creating a system itself. The system has to appear in one of those formats. That makes it a system. The audio, the written, the video, maybe all three. But all of those are documentation. Document means not just in your head, it exists somewhere else. Okay, so it's outside of you literally doing things for them or talking directly to them. So codification is about emptying your mind and getting all of your notes, quote unquote, on paper. This sounds simple on the surface. Sounds like a pretty simple thing to do. Okay, let me get all the things I know and get it on paper. Anyone who's ever been tasked with codifying your knowledge, you'll realize very quickly how big of a task this can become, especially if you have a lot of knowledge, because there's a lot of things that got to get documented. And especially if you know a process that could be very detailed and or has many moving parts or variables involved, because you have to lay out every possible variable, every possible permutation, all the things that could happen with it. You got to get all that stuff documented. This is the reason why any of you who's ever read a standard operating procedure or a manual for a well-known organization, you look at their manuals, they're usually pretty thick. Those binders are pretty thick. Why? Because it has to consider every possibility. Anything that could possibly come up has to be documented inside of that manual, so that someone who's running that operation and is not the person who started it, they can run it without having to make a phone call and say, well, what do I do if this happens, if this happens, if this happens? Everything needs to be in that document. For example, when I was working at McDonald's as a team, I saw my manager walking around with this big white binder, and it was a big, thick binder. And I could tell from the way she was looking at it and walking around that she was looking at a manager's manual. She was the main manager of the McDonald's restaurant. And she had a manual that was telling her every single piece of how to run that restaurant. On top of having that manual, she even had to go to training for being a manager of a McDonald's. And McDonald's literally has a place called Hamburger University. If you've been listening for a while, you heard me talk about this before. There's literally a place called Hamburger University. It's based, last I heard, it was based in Chicago. And if you're going to operate a McDonald's, or you're going to be a franchisee or a main manager, you must go to Hamburger University and go through training where they train you on how to operate a McDonald's, because you cannot just do what you want to do when you own a McDonald's. Even if you're the owner, you still have to follow their rules, and you still have to go to training. They tell you how to do it, and then they give you a manual just to remind you of what they just told you. So if you ever have a question, look in the damn manual. All right, that's the reason why we gave it to you. Is the reason why we brought you to the university. That is an example of codifying knowledge. The reason McDonald's has so many locations all around the world is not because there's one main McDonald's wizard, Ronald McDonald, running around the world, running every McDonald's, one person, one stop at a time. It's because they got everything documented to the point that you or I or Tom, Dick, and Harry can become a McDonald's franchisee, go to Hamburger University, learn how to run the McDonald's, take our manual home with us, and we can run that McDonald's without having to make a call to the home office every 5 minutes. That's proper codification. That's what it does. Point number 2. We're talking here today about why you need to codify your knowledge ASAP. Number 2, what I shared with you in the first point was a simple explanation. Was that simple, what I told you in the first point? Because I'm about to get more detailed. Y'all ready for the detail? Okay, here it comes. Codification is not just about getting your knowledge on paper, even though I just told you it's about getting your knowledge on paper. It's about getting your knowledge on paper in a way that is easily understandable, that is followable, and that can and will produce a consistent and predictable result without your involvement. Everybody get all that? Should I say that again? I think I should say all of that again, because I want to make sure everybody heard this, because this is the crux of what we're talking about here. Codification is not just getting your knowledge on paper. You need to get your knowledge on paper in a way that anyone can understand it, as long as they can read or understand the language in which you wrote it or spoke it. They need to be able to follow it. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, without getting tripped up. And following it should produce a consistently desired result. What is the result they want? Does following your process consistently produce that result? And can they do all of that without ever talking to you? Now, why does the talking to you part matter? Talking to you part matters because if your codification is done properly, someone should never need to talk to you. They can just follow what's in your program and they'll get the result, and they never need to speak to you. Why? Because what's in your program tells them everything they need to know. Every question is answered. Every detail is covered, and they can just do it on their own. All right? That's what makes it valuable. That's what makes your codification a separate entity from you. That's how a system can replace a person. A system can replace talent if it's done properly. This is the detail about codification that all of you need to understand. What you get on paper needs to be clear enough that someone else can use it, get the desired or predicted results, even if they never come in contact with the person who codified the information in the first place. Meaning, you can codify some knowledge that you have right now today, all of you listening to this, in 2025, and in the year 3025, 1,000 years after you're gone, somebody can come across your codification and produce a desired result, and they can't talk to you because you've been dead for a long time. That's good codification. When it's done properly, that's what it does. That's the effect of it. Does everybody understand this? For example, my first products that I ever created and sold online were basketball training programs sold for $5 a piece, teaching players how to dribble, how to shoot, etc. And players who bought and used my programs, they got those programs because they were following me on YouTube and they liked my stuff, but they never had direct personal conversations with me. All right, to this day, tens of thousands of those programs have been sold, maybe hundreds of thousands of copies, and I don't have 100,000 programs, but thousands of copies of those programs have been sold to players who I have never personally met. They never had direct conversations with me, so they didn't text me, they didn't email me, they didn't DM me, none of those things. They didn't need to. Why? Because they could do the programs without ever talking to me, because the programs are properly codified in such a way that they can just follow it and get the result, and they don't need to ask me any questions because I laid out the details of everything they need to know cleanly enough that everything's in there. Just follow the instructions. My programs are codified in such a way that without knowing me, they only had to know me. They only had to know who I am. They just heard the program's good. They got the program, got it, and said, this is a good program. I wonder who wrote this. Oh, Dre Baldwin, who's that? All right, that can happen too. Why? Because the codification is the star, not the person. Now, the person helps you know that they have something for sale, but somebody can still buy my program and use it without knowing me, because it ain't about me. The program is not about me. The program is about the result. And see, this is where the system starts to replace the person. You all understand this, because 1,000 years from now, I want people still buying my programs from my great times 10 grandchildren. They're going to be running my business and selling my programs. And they're not going to be able to sell it on the back of, well, Dre Baldwin was this great basketball player who played Division III and walked on, and then he went and played overseas, and he was on YouTube, and all those things. There may not be a such thing as overseas 1,000 years from now. Who knows? YouTube is not going to exist 1,000 years from now. Who knows? So those things are not going to be good selling points. They're good selling points maybe to those of you who play basketball now, but they're not going to be good selling points 1,000 years from now, because nobody's going to know who the hell I am. That won't matter. So how my program is still going to sell? They're going to sell because of the result they produce, not because of the person who made them. So all of you understand this. This is one of the reasons why a lot of influencers who are around these days, as soon as they die or they retire or they stop working, their stuff stops selling, because they're only sold because of who they were. But when you're no longer active in the marketplace, and or there's a whole wave of market, i.e. customers who have no idea who you are, then your stuff won't sell, because it was only selling because of you. Well, if you're not around, then how's your stuff going to sell? Well, trick question. It's not going to sell. This is the reason all of you need to codify your knowledge ASAP, because the codification of your knowledge becomes more important than you, the person who codified the knowledge. But understand, you'll still make money, because when people buy that codified knowledge, you make money, even if they don't know your name. But why does it matter if they know your name? You're still making money. I mean, let's remember what business we're in here, folks. Entrepreneurs, we're in the business of making money. You're not in the business of being famous. You're in the business of making money. If you happen to use your fame to make money, great. But the whole purpose is to make money, not just to be known. And again, there will come a day when you ain't that famous to a certain swath of the population who still needs what you have. You still want to be able to sell to those people. So that's why you want to extract your value in the marketplace from you just being this big star to the system or the product or the outcome being the star. Why? Because that lasts longer than you will. Does everyone understand this? This is why the codification matters. And when your codification is done right, this is what happens. Now, there are more complicated processes to codify than how to dribble a basketball. All right, I'm giving you a simple example. Building a spaceship is a more detailed process. Coding some type of computer software is more detailed. Managing a $10 million asset portfolio is more detailed. The higher the value of the thing you can codify, the more potential you give yourself for putting it out there, marketing and business-wise. Now, there are different ways of doing things. If you want to teach people how to build spaceships, you might only need to make one sale a year, and it can make you tens of millions of dollars. Now, if you're selling $5 training programs, as I was back in the day, you might need to sell thousands of those. But if you have a big enough audience, you can. I told you, I've sold probably hundreds of thousands of copies of those programs. Why? Because the outcome that I was producing is still there to this very day. As a matter of fact, just this morning when I woke up from the day I'm recording this, there was a couple sales that went through from my training program's website, because the website is still out there. The videos where I was telling people go to that website and buy my programs still exist, and people still find their way to that website and they still buy my programs. I've not picked up a basketball in 10 years. They're not buying it because Dre Baldwin is so great. Actually, maybe they are. They might be watching my YouTube video and say this guy's great and they'll get the program. But I think it's more these days, it's not because I'm out on the court. It's more because they're like, well, this can get me the outcome. This can help me get the outcome. I don't care who this guy is. I'm going to look up Dre Baldwin. He's sitting there in a suit in front of a microphone. What does it have to do with me learning how to dribble and do the crossover? Nothing. But can it help me do the dribble and the crossover? Yes. Okay, I'm buying the program. That's where you want to get to. You want to get to where it's not just about you. Because if it's just about you, again, then you has to keep working. At some point, all of us are going to either want to stop working or we're going to have to stop working. That's why the codification matters. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why you need to codify your knowledge ASAP. Number 3, the sooner and better you get your knowledge codified, the more potential you give yourself for expanding and multiplying the ROI from the knowledge you possess. This one I've already been hinting at a lot so far in this episode. ROI stands for return on investment. The knowledge that you have, you've invested in getting that knowledge, right? You went to school, you did training, you have experience, you put years in, you have read books, you've gone to programs, you've been trained, you've been coached. All of those things are investments that led to you knowing what you know. Now, if you want to give yourself more potential to multiply the returns on those investments, because you put time, money, attention, energy, and focus into knowing what you know. You want to get more return from that. You want to codify your knowledge so that your knowledge can make you money, even if you are personally not doing the work that leads to the money. You want to do the work one time and get paid over and over and over again. As I've already explained to you, I made a $5 training program, sold it tens of thousands of times. Do I have to talk to tens of thousands of basketball players and teach them how to do the training? No, I did it once. All I had to do is tell them that I have it, let them know that I have it, also known as marketing. Then they can go buy it. Never talk to me. I get the money. They get the result. Everybody wins. The system is doing the work at that point. Are you following? So if you have a ton of knowledge and it must come from you in order for the returns to be realized, you are limited by how long and how much and how hard you are willing and able to work. This is how people literally work themselves to death, because they never create an entity that removes them from the equation. When you codify your knowledge, you are no longer limited by how far. Actually, let me back up. When your knowledge is codified, your only limit is how far the word of your knowledge can reach. In other words, as long as you can market yourself, you can sell yourself. And these days we do it through the internet. You can reach people all over the world in places that you've never been and maybe will never go. And you can sell to people they know of your product and they will never be in the places where you're at. It doesn't matter. Because the internet shrinks the world. Now you can reach them, they can reach you, and everybody benefits. And again, your knowledge can reach in ways that don't even involve you. All right. When your knowledge is fully codified, your physical presence is not required at all. The person who came up with the system for what we know today as Walmart, for example, Mr. Sam Walton. All right, this guy is no longer alive. He wrote a book called, I believe it's called Only in America. I read it many years ago. If you haven't read it, you should read it. Sam Walton was explaining the basis for what Walmart became. Walmart's system continues to produce billions, with a B, billions of dollars of revenue every single year. The heirs of Sam Walton, after he passed away, he split his wealth up amongst his children, and all his children were married, and his children became 3 of the wealthiest people in the world when he died. That was his wealth divided up amongst 3. They were still in the top 20 wealthiest people in the world. Do you understand how much money that is? That one guy was up there. When he died, he split his wealth into thirds, and the 3 people who got the thirds are still in the top 20. That's how much money Walmart generated because he had a system. His wealth is so massive, even split up, they're in the top 20. And that's not even counting their spouses, some of them may have exes, their kids, all of them are billionaires. Why? Because of the system that Walmart created. I'm not even talking about the quality of their products. You may not even think their products are that good. I don't shop at Walmart personally. But you can't knock the system. The system absolutely works. So it is cool and great to make a bunch of money off your own efforts and the value in the marketplace that those efforts bring. Okay. Eventually, though, you may want to take a vacation. Maybe one day you want to sleep in. Maybe one day you just want to stop working. Right? Any of you want to eventually just stop working, whatever work you're doing. The better your knowledge is codified, the better you can do even when you're personally doing nothing. Now, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great if you could make the same money that you're making now while not working at all? What if you could make the same money you're making now while working half as much as you work now, because half of your money is made by your personal efforts, but half of it is made by your codified knowledge just making money on its own. That's why the system matters, everybody. But you got to codify your knowledge. If you have no codified knowledge, then none of this is possible. Let's recap today's class, which is why to codify your knowledge ASAP. Again, listen back to episode 1101 where I talked about this initially many years ago, because this is something I've been talking about for a long time, as you can tell. Point number one, getting clear on what codifying your knowledge actually means by definition is to organize and arrange systematically, especially in writing. In other words, your stuff needs to be in a format that someone else can consume it and they can learn what you know without ever talking to you. Number two, that was the simple explanation. The more detailed explanation is it's more than just getting it on paper. It's about getting it on paper in a way that is understandable, followable, and produces a consistent and predictable result without your involvement. Something that another person wants, and it does it over and over and over again, and they never need to talk to you because every question has been answered, every permutation has been addressed. Number three, the sooner and better you get your knowledge codified, the more potential you give yourself for expanding and multiplying the return on investment that you get from the knowledge that you possess. Many of you, your knowledge ROI is limited by how much work you personally can do, how many miles you can cover, how many hands you can shake. The problem is there's a human limit to that, because a human being, as of today's science, can only be in one place at a time. Even if you're online, you still have to be online in order to sell stuff. How about if your system could sell for you so that when you go to sleep at night, you wake up in the morning, you've made money from sales and you didn't have to do any work. You made money in your sleep. All of you have heard of the concept. How does that happen? It happens when you codify your knowledge. There are other ways to do it too, such as investments, but one way is to codify your knowledge so that your knowledge is making you money even when you're no longer working, to the point that even when you're no longer alive, your kids and their kids can make money from the knowledge that you've codified if your knowledge is codified. But if it's not codified, then all of this is all for naught. And as soon as you stop working, everything you created disintegrates into dust. Your choice. All that said, you want to learn to codify your knowledge. You want to start codifying and start putting yourself in position to where you can remove yourself from the business, but the money keeps coming. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, schedule a time to have a call with us, and let's get to it. Work on your game. Dre all